At the present time, there's a lot of conversation about increased electrification of end uses and, of course, decarbonizing the electricity generation side of that equation. Those increased uses include deep penetration of electric appliances for heating, cooling, cooking, etc. But also electric vehicles are front of mind, not just in the light duty fleet, but also in the medium and heavy duty fleet as well. So this represents possibly a completely new era for power in the United States and globally, where it's going to go into a growth mode. Some analyses, like those from the International Energy Agency, even our own domestically, predict that to decarbonize and follow an electrification pathway implies maybe 3-fold to 10-fold increase in the load and the generation fleet requirements in the next, say, 30 years by 2050, about 10-fold in that. That could happen also globally. That's an enormous opportunity. It's also an enormous need for capital. But if the system is, as you say, inefficient, isn't it also an enormous opportunity to plan, think, and invest differently?
Absolutely. I mean, my reaction first is we can get more out of what we already have. I mean, for example, when we talk about, almost always start talking about the need for more transmission. Of course, we're going to need to have more transmission. But again, the transmission infrastructure, again, has around only 50% capacity utilization. So just to build more and cleaner, adding cleaner means of production onto the current grid architecture to meet this growing demand is going to be really, really expensive.
So that implies that there's a real opportunity for innovation to rethink new architectures, remuneration opportunities, investment opportunities that are complementary to the existing architecture, but really represent, I'll call it a step change going forward. So you started down this pathway with the non-wires alternatives in New York.
Yeah, maybe I can talk a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe I can talk a little bit about that. So probably the best example of it was in Brooklyn and Queens, where an area of low growth in the system, and Con Ed was going to deploy $1.2 billion in conventional substations to meet that load growth. And we can imagine that probably on average the capacity utilization of those substations would be 54%. Be highly used in the middle of the summer, but much less used the rest of the year. So give Con Ed lots of credit, because instead of that approach of spending $1.2 billion in substations, Con Ed asked the market for alternative solutions, as you say, non-wires alternatives, and provided information to market participants about locations, about grid conditions at that location, and demand forecasts. And what came back from the market was a whole range of alternatives that included solar, storage, energy efficiency, demand response, and combined heat and power. And together, these solutions cost $200 million as opposed to $1.2 billion. And so that's $1 billion in customer savings. Doesn't take into account the savings that would come from reduction of peak power costs, doesn't take into account the fact that this is a cleaner alternative, and it doesn't take into account the fact that it improves the resiliency of the system. So because the system is so financially inefficient as this model is developed, utilities can earn about what they would have earned using these non-wires alternatives. And now there are more than 36 of these projects across the state. Every utility in the state has changed its approach to capital planning. And what I would say is it doesn't take a lot of high tech to think about this approach to get started really around the world, because every utility has areas of grid constraint. Every utility knows when it needs to replace capital. And so the idea here is see what the market can come up with as an alternative.
So thanks for sharing the details of that. And I think it's a great example. And I also think that sharing those stories with others and the opportunity for innovative companies to come in with creative solutions, I think is a really important element that are capitally efficient as well as, I'll call it, physically efficient as well. It a little bit goes to how should utilities and frankly company leaders be thinking about leveraging the technology innovation space along with the software innovation space and work more in partnership with utilities or with others. And so here I think others, industrial customers, residential customers, et cetera, to approach the growth in the system, or I'll call it maybe more importantly, address the inefficiencies in the system with more creative solutions. This is directly to what I think are insights for corporate leaders, that they have to embrace creative innovation to come up with different solutions that fit into a current architecture rather than just doing the same old thing. Is that a fair way to think about how that innovation came about?
Well, I think that what we're already seeing is tremendous interest at not only at an individual level, but at a community level, but also at a corporate level to have more control over one's energy system. And that's not going to go away. That's going to increase as the cost of distributed solutions go down and as the cost of delivering conventional electricity continues to go up. Because while generation costs from low natural gas has driven the cost of generation down, the distribution costs continue to increase. So, and in addition to that, there are power quality issues, which I'd be interested in Doug, you're talking about that, because companies have to spend a lot of money on just protecting their, not just their computers, but all of the electronics that are associated with their business, including machines. So there are power quality issues. So there are cost issues, reliability issues, quality issues that are going to lead to companies having more interest in having more control over their energy system. And I think that the opportunity is also to think about how these solutions can be part of the overall rebuilding of the grid, because that represents also another revenue opportunity and reduce the cost of these systems.